Hey guys, welcome back. We're here for self-monitoring. This is part of the Diabetes Eating and Wellness session course. I'm Caroline Fornchel, owner of Elwell, and I'm here with Julie Nance, registered dietitian, nutritionist, certified diabetes care and education specialist. Thanks so much for joining us again today, Julie.
It's great to be here. Probably one of my favorite subjects to talk about too is monitoring. Let's get going. So we know what blood sugar is. We've already talked about that in the first session. So now we need to talk about why we have to test it. Number one, we're not psychics. I can't tell you right now exactly what my blood sugar is. Even though I'm wearing a continuous glucose monitoring system, it's not always accurate. So I can't even go by that and tell you exactly what my blood sugar is unless I prick a finger. That's the only way I'm going to know. So, our blood sugar changes. If you're never under any stress, if you don't eat, if you don't drink something, if you don't rest, then your blood sugar may not change. But because we do many different things throughout the day, our blood sugar will change throughout the day. There are 86,400 seconds in a 24-hour period of time. That means that through that time, blood sugar is going to change all throughout the day for a lot of different reasons, for the foods that you eat, for the stress that you may be under, for exercise that you may do, for the lack of sleep or too much sleep that you got last night. So a lot of it plays into what your blood sugars will do. So is your blood sugar level too high? Is it too low? These are important things to know, so you know what you need to do. If it's too high, why is it too high? Is it too high because you ate too much at dinner time? Is it too low because you gave yourself too much medication, or maybe your medication dosage isn't correct? So there are things that we need to know what these numbers are so that your control can get much, much better, rather than that roller coaster ride of blood sugars that sometimes we take. All right, so how can I correct out of target blood sugar levels? That's going to depend on what your doctor really wants you to do to correct it, but we have to look at the cause of that blood sugar level. Why is it out of control? Why is it not what it should be at that period of time? We look at the foods that you eat, we look at the medication you gave yourself, and it could very easily be the dosage is incorrect, or it should be a different amount. Maybe you were prescribed something different. Maybe you've had diabetes for a longer period of time and your doses just are changing because diabetes is a progressive disease. So it can be a lot of different things. Do you need to take action to correct a blood glucose level that is too high or too low? You need to know these things. How do I correct it? You don't want to live with a blood sugar in 400s. You need to know what it is so that you can correct a blood sugar that is that high. You don't want to live with a blood sugar that's 50. You need to know what your blood sugar is so that you can eat something to bring it up to a normal range. What changes can you make in the way that you eat or take your medication or increase your activity that may improve your blood glucose readings? So there are some changes that you can make. Sometimes it's not your fault. Sometimes it is not something that you've done. Sometimes it is simply that the medication is out of whack. But sometimes it is things that we can take control of. It is your diabetes. It is not your spouse's diabetes. It is not your mother's diabetes. It is not your best friend's diabetes. It is your diabetes. This is your blood sugar. And this is something that you need to test so that you know what you can do to keep it under control as much as possible. And we're going to teach you some of the things that you can do to really control blood sugar levels as much as possible. So we know that sugar plays a pretty big role in our blood sugar levels. So sugars that we eat, from the candies oh, that's just plain old white sugar on this screen, to cupcakes and desserts, all contain sugar. And I don't have my soda cup with me, but even regular sodas, which contain a high amount of sugar, can actually bring blood sugar levels up. So cutting something like that out can very easily help to control blood sugar levels a little bit better. All right, so the recommendation for blood sugars is before meals. We have two different schools of thought, one being the American Diabetes Association, or the ADA, and one being the American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists, or AACE. For the ADA, the recommendation is anywhere between 80 and 130 before a meal. And then for the AACE is less than 110. And this is your blood sugar levels milligrams per deciliter. 2 hours after a meal, this is 2 hours after your first bite. Not 2 hours after you stop the meal, 2 hours after the first bite. It should be less than 180, and this is the American Diabetes Association. AACE says less than 140. Well, that's a big difference, right? The AACE, the American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists, have done a lot of studies, and they found that the lower the blood sugar is after a meal, then that's going to greatly decrease those risks of diabetes complications later on in life. However, it's really difficult for most people to get blood sugars down that low after a meal. The American Diabetes Association says less than 180. Yes, it is a little bit higher, but it is really more realistic. I usually say for somebody who is newly diagnosed, let's shoot for that goal of 180. Once we get that under control, then let's shoot for that goal of less than 140 after a meal. For bedtime, this is going to depend on medication that you're on, and it's going to depend on what your doctor says. So there may be a recommendation for you what your blood sugar should be prior to going to bed, but especially if you're on insulin, you absolutely should test the blood sugar before going to bed. Low blood sugar sometimes can creep on in the middle of the night, and one of the symptoms of low blood sugar is fatigue or tired. You're sleeping, so you're already asleep and tired, then you may not wake up with that low blood sugar. Just treat it. It may not wake you up. When I was first diagnosed, one of the symptoms that I would have if I had a low blood sugar overnight was nightmares. I never had nightmares, only if I had a low blood sugar, which wasn't very often, but that was the only time I had it. So I would wake up if I had a low blood sugar. But after about a year, that went away, and I didn't have any symptoms in the middle of the night. So testing blood sugar before bed and treating a low blood sugar before bed is extremely important. All right, now supplies. There's a lot of supplies. Yes, when you travel, you're going to have to take your supplies with you. I keep supplies. I have my testing supplies in my purse. I have some in my bathroom, and I have them in my kitchen. So when I leave the house, I always make sure that my purse has adequate amount of test strips and alcohol swabs and Lancets. Everything that I need is in my purse when I leave the house. I actually also have a set in my office at work. So just in case I do forget to put it in my purse, there's always a set in my office just in case. But in the bathroom, I have some in the bathroom so that if I get up in the middle of the night, I don't have to trudge all the way to the kitchen to test my blood sugar. I can test it right there. And I do have supplies. I do have glucose tabs and juice boxes in the bathroom too, just in case I need. So it's preparing yourself. I used to live by the seat of my pants. Prior to being diagnosed, I was the most spontaneous person in the world. Now I am the most coordinated person and organized person that there is, because sometimes we have to be to really get control as much as we can. All right, so the first thing you're going to need is your blood glucose meter. This is mine. So mine's just a little itty bitty meter. Caroline's got hers too. They're much smaller. They used to be, oh my gosh, if I had my first one, it was massive, and I think it weighed about 5 pounds, or at least it felt like it did. So there are tons of different ones out there. And some are really good, and some are okay. They're a lot less expensive, and some are quite expensive. So your doctor will write a prescription, and most insurance companies will pay for certain types or certain brands. So you can talk with your insurance company and with your doctor to find out what kind is going to work with your insurance company and with you. Now, Lancets can be these little itty bitty things, and taking that little tiny top off, boop, shows a little itty bitty, you kind of can't see it very well. I don't know if it's going to, I don't know if you can see that very well, but little tiny little needle on the inside. So I have to put it, I will poke myself if I don't close it. I have to close it back up. So the lancets are important because you're not going to get the blood out unless you actually stick it. So nothing's going to come out unless you do. And again, it's going to find something that your insurance company is going to pay for. But you need a lancet device. And now some people I know have done this. Boop. I don't recommend that. Not some people are perfectly fine with doing that. I don't recommend that. But there are lancet devices that you can get, different types. And my personal one is this one. Yes, it's a little larger, but I love my Fast Clicks.
Love it. That's
great
one.
So use that. The lancet device is the best way. It simply fits in. Take the little top off, put it on. Now, and I say this is a little bit like a gun. You can cock it and shoot it. All right, alcohol swabs or alcohol wipes. Wash your hands. Alcohol can dry your skin. So if you're outside of the house, you don't have access to soap and water, then fine. The alcohol swabs are perfectly fine. But if you're at home, wash your hands with warm soapy water and use that instead. You may not have as drying. I know now though, as we're washing our hands as often as we are related to COVID, our hands are drying anyway. But wash your hands with that warm soapy water. Cold hands don't deliver blood very well. So, that warm water can help to warm them up a little bit.
What about, can you clarify hand sanitizers?
Oh, hand sanitizers. Some hand sanitizers have lotion in them. And sometimes that lotion can affect the reading. So hand sanitizers, you can use them as long as they don't have a lotion in them, but I don't usually recommend them. I prefer that you use soap and water or an alcohol pad as much as possible. And also make sure that your hand is dry. Don't wet your finger with an alcohol swab and stick it, because that alcohol can actually mix with your blood and can potentially affect the reading. So make sure that your hand is dry. Don't lick it and blow on it. Don't do that. Just wipe it off and then give it a chance to dry, and that'll give you time to load your lancet device while you're waiting for it to dry. Control solution. So control solutions are important, but you won't use them all the time. These are only needed if you think that your test strips may be affected. Leaving test strips in your car in the heat or in the super cold can affect the test strips, and they can give you inaccurate readings. I've had test strips before that for some reason it kept reading over 300. I'm like, I know that my blood sugar is not over 300. Why am I getting these readings? I used a control solution to test the test strip to see how well it was working, and it turned out that it was outside the normal range, and those test strips were bad. So once I used good test strips, and I found out that, my blood sugar was fine. So sometimes the test strips, if they're left in a car for a long period of time, especially in the heat or in the extreme cold, can affect the test strips. And these things are $50 at minimum. So they're expensive. So you don't want to lose and ruin an entire bottle of these. Blood glucose log. Now, some meters, my meter stores everything, and it has a USB a device on the end. It is a USB device, so I can plug this into my computer and download it. My doctor can plug it into the computer and download it. But that really doesn't do me any good if I don't write it down where I can see things all at one time. Keeping a log is so important because you can see every day at breakfast what your blood sugar is, or every day at lunch, or every day at supper, or every night before you go to bed. You can actually see it and start looking at a trend. And unless you go through this thing and scroll through it and just look, you can't really see trends very easily by scrolling through this. So keeping a log is one of the best ways to do it. And it's one of the best things for your physician or your healthcare provider to look at too, because he or she can look at that and see trends much easier. Now, Sharps container. These things, if you've poked your finger with one yet, I don't know where it went to. If you've poked your finger with one yet, you know they hurt and they can hurt. They're sharp. These and anything that is sharp, any type of needles, needs to go into a Sharps container. They're about $2, give or take, at Walmart or CVS or Walgreens. So you can get them from just about anywhere. They may be a little bit more than $2. But if you get one, put your Sharps into that Sharp container. Whenever you go to dispose of it, close it up. And depending on the area that you live in, you may be able to throw it into the trash can, or you may be able to take it to your pharmacist or a hospital and drop it off there. Possibly, I would call and ask those questions before you do that, though, before you make that trip there. If you leave this without being closed up in the trash can, this could actually poke somebody. So once it pokes, let's say you're a trash person that comes and picks it up, they pick up the bag, they poke themselves with it. Now they're going to be at risk for a lot of potential diseases, not just from you, but whatever may have been in your trash can. So, and that's something we don't want to put somebody else through. I used to, when I would teach this at the hospital, I would always say, I'm a Law and Order kind of gal. I love detective shows. And I would always say, imagine a detective going to the dump, searching for something, and picking up a bunch of bags and getting stuck 100 times. You know, we don't want that to happen. Once this goes to, if it does go to the dump, this, and you know how they compact things, this can't be compacted. It can't be broken open. You can use other containers like a laundry detergent bottle, but it has to be taped up. It has to say Sharps on it. But when it's compressed at a dump, then it can explode, and everything in it can come out. These, though, will not. So these are always a much, much, much better option to have. Okay, so if it's possible, let's test. Are you ready, Caroline?
Oh yeah, we're ready.
All right, go get your meter. Hopefully you already have it with you, but go get your meter and everything that you need, and we're gonna start getting ready for testing of blood sugar to see how we're doing, okay? All right, so read instructions first. If you've never used your meter before, read the instructions. And I also recommend that you fill out the warranty card that comes with it and send it in, because when they have updates to that meter, they'll send you a new one. Or if they have a recall on that meter, you'll know and you can get rid of it or send it back to them and they'll send you a new one. So I always recommend filling out that warranty card, please. All right, so your diabetes educator is going to guide you through your steps for testing your blood sugar. Set the Lancet device, set the depth of the Lancet device. So on your Lancet device, you may see numbers. You can twist that top part to numbers. So the numbers are, the one being doesn't go very deep. If it has a 9, this one has a 9 on it, means it's going to go in very, very deep. And that's for those individuals. The higher the number is for those individuals who have very thick skin. I've tested my blood sugar 8 to 12 times a day for the last 30 years. Oh, I have some thick skin from calluses on my fingers. So my meter is set, my Lancet device is set a little bit higher, not at 9, but it's set a little bit higher than what would be considered normal for somebody who is newly diagnosed and is not testing their blood sugar very often. You always want to wash your hands prior to, always a recommendation to do that. Even lotion can affect the reading. whenever I was driving, I'm from Savannah, Georgia. So I was driving south on I-95 to go down to see my dad in Savannah. And my blood sugar was, I felt like my blood sugar was starting to drop, but my sensor, my continuous glucose monitoring system, was alarming that it was going high. I'm like, oh, this is weird. So I stopped and tested my blood sugar. I pulled off on the side of the road at a rest stop, tested my blood sugar. Now my finger stick said 195. I'm like, okay, wait a minute, that's weird because I feel like it's dropping. And I tested again, 190 something. So I went inside at the rest stop, washed my hands, tested it again, it was 120.
Ooh.
So I had just put lotion on my hands about 5 minutes prior to, yes, I was driving down the road while I was putting on lotion. I'm sorry to say that. But I'd put on lotion about 5 minutes prior to pulling off to test my blood sugar. So it may not always affect, but it can affect blood sugar levels. Even if you've eaten something sweet, you lick your finger and test it, you may have an inaccurate reading related to that. So keep that in mind. Wash your hands whenever you can. Use soap and water when you can. All right. So we're going to load that Lansing device. So I've already loaded this one. I'll load it again. Let me take this one out. All right. So I've taken the lid off of this Lansing device, putting in the Lancet, taking that little tab off. Be careful not to stick yourself. It's quite possible, and I've done it before. Put the lid back on. Now it's ready to go. We want to make sure it's set at a good setting so that it's comfortable for you. Oh, couldn't find test strips. All right. So we want to put a strip in the meter. Sometimes it takes a couple of seconds for that strip to be read. So sometimes it takes just a couple of seconds for your meter to get used to it. Now, use the sides. Do not get into the cuticle of your nail, but we want the sides of your fingers, not the center. This is where all the nerves are, in the center of your finger. We want it on the sides. You have less nerves here, so it's less likely to be painful. All right, place the device on the side of your finger, and when you're ready, boop, let it go. Not too bad. And some meters, most meters nowadays, do not take very much blood at all. Most of them nowadays take very little blood. So a lot of times we don't have to worry about it. So I have my result. Now I know what my result is. I simply can do what I need to do to treat it. Now, Caroline, what do you usually recommend as far as how many times they can use a Lancet?
Okay, so it's my understanding that we're really aiming for one use. Do you recommend more than that?
Well, it depends on the insurance and how much they're able to get. The reason is after about 2 times, one of the reasons why we do recommend switching it out as often as possible. Number one, if you didn't clean your hands very well, now you've got bacteria on that needle part. Number two, each time you use that little needle part, it bends a little bit, and then it becomes more and more painful as you continue to use that same Lancet over and over and over again. I usually recommend, if your hands were clean, you can use it 2 times, but no more than that.
Okay.
Pull it out, trash it, put it in your Sharps container.
I like her style. This is good.
Put it in your Sharps container, and then you're good. You're good to go and ready for the next one when that comes around. So make sure you write down what your results are. That's something that's going to be really important for you to keep track of and to see any trends, and for your physician to see as well, or your healthcare provider. So processing this experience, what are your feelings about this? A lot of people have always been afraid. And I'll tell you, I used to work for the U.S. Army. I was a civilian employee. I worked as a diabetes educator. I trained soldiers who were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I had a 21-year-old soldier in my office diagnosed with type 1 diabetes while he was in service, and trying to get him to prick his finger. He literally started crying. I'm like, wait a minute, you've been to Afghanistan. You've seen things that most people should never see in their lifetime, but you're shedding a tear because I want to prick your finger.
Yeah.
And he said, I am more scared of this than anything I've ever been through in my life. I said, okay, watch this. We're going to do this. It's very easy. Once he pricked his finger, he was like, oh, that is so simple. Okay, I get it now. It's not as bad. So he had to work through those feelings of fear. And once he got over that hurdle and realized it's not as bad as it seems, he was okay. So a lot of times we have that fear of pain. We have that fear of, I'm going to stick myself. It's okay. Take your time. But you'll find out that especially if that setting, if it does hurt pretty bad, take that setting, go to a lower number if you have to. And that will take away the pain as long as you're going to get a little bit of blood out, enough that that meter can read up. Taking action and having control, being able to control this. This is your diabetes. This is your blood sugar number. So we want you to have control of this. So the best times to check your blood sugar is when you first wake up in the morning. Okay, go ahead and pee, get that out of the way, go to the bathroom. That is the first thing that we do every morning. Get that out of the way. And then when you're done, wash your hands with soap and water, and then test your blood sugar to see what it is. This is a fasting blood sugar and one of the most important blood sugars that we can look at to make sure that you're doing okay. So always test your blood sugar. Your waking blood sugar is probably one of the most important ones that you can get. Other ones are important too, but this is a really good one. Before your meals and before taking any medication, you do need to test it, especially if it's insulin. Especially if you're giving your insulin before a meal, you need to know what your blood sugar is. 2 hours after a meal, this can be based on, a lot of this is based on what is recommended from your physician and how many test strips your insurance company will pay for. So if your insurance company will only pay for you to test twice a day, then that may be what your plan is going to be, but your physician, your healthcare provider will help you work through that. Before bedtime, especially if you're on insulin, especially if you're on insulin. And then definitely work with your healthcare provider to find what's going to work best for you and your insurance plan. Your hemoglobin A1C is important, and it's something that you need to know what it is, because this is an average of what your blood sugars have been over the past 3 months. It's in a percentage. It's not in a number like 134 or 154, which is what you'll see your blood sugar as, but this is in a number like 7.0 or 6.8. In your blood cell, actually, hemoglobin, heme, H-E-M-E, which is part of hemoglobin, actually means blood. It means red. It means blood. So the hemoglobin is in your blood, which carries oxygen. It's one of its jobs, carries oxygen all throughout your body. But that hemoglobin also can collect glucose molecules in your blood. So the higher your blood sugar levels are going to be, the more glucose molecules that can attach to that hemoglobin. And that's what this hemoglobin A1C test looks at, is how many glucose molecules are attached to those hemoglobin, or attached to those red blood cells. So that gives us an idea of what your blood sugars have been. A number that is fairly high, that'll give us an idea that maybe you're not as well controlled as possibly you should be. So we have to start looking at what could be potentially causing this lack of control and work with you to help to bring those numbers down. A lower number, but I will tell you though, one of the things about the A1C is if you have a lot of lows and you have a lot of high blood sugar levels, then your A1C may turn out to be perfectly normal, because remember, it's an average. So if your blood sugars are rarely 100, but are always 50, or half the time 50 and half the time 250, then your A1C may seem normal. So it's that if you have like really wide ranges often, then you actually may have a normal A1C. That's why it's important for that log, so we can see where the blood sugars are and have been.
So the
The
A1C,
individual blood sugars.
it's not a substitute. It's not a
No,
substitute
it's
for
not.
testing, right? So we need it all. We need all the data.
We need everything. We need everything. We look at the picture. We look at the whole picture, but those little details in that big picture help us to figure out how to train you to really take good care of yourself so that you can live as high a quality of life as possible. All right, so your A1C is really important. And I used to tell my patients to make sure that you know what that number is. If your doctor says your A1C is fine, what is it? What is my number? You need to know what that number is. And you can actually look it up online. There's EAG, and we'll talk about that in a second, calculators to find out what that means, what that percentage actually means as far as an average goes. There is A1C testing at home, and these are good. I would always recommend, though, using your doctor's what is drawn at your doctor's office or in the lab first and foremost. Those can give you a good idea, but I do recommend using what is drawn at your in your doctor's office or at the lab. Use that as your actual number of what to go by. So your EAG is the number that percentage represents. And there is a formula that is used to calculate what it is. There are calculators online that you can easily type in EAG, estimated average glucose, and you can go look it up. And you can put in what your A1C is and calculate it out. I had all of these memorized at one point, but just to let you see, this is in the EAG, what that means. So an A1C of 7 means your blood sugars are averaging around 154. An A1C of 12 means your blood sugars are averaging around 298. When I was diagnosed, my A1C was 14.8, I believe. So it was very, very high.
Oh.
For daily monitoring, you do so much already in your day, right? You already keep track of lots of stuff in your day anyway. So this is something that can be fairly easy to do. There's lots of apps out there that can help you keep track of it too, that you don't have to to write it down. Though I am from the old school, I still like to write stuff down. I don't have to, everything doesn't have to go on my phone. But there are a lot of apps that you can use that'll work just fantastic. Just like you track your bank statement, you can keep track of your daily monitoring, your finger sticks. You can keep track of those as well. Some of your meters may have an app that goes with your meter that can actually help for you to keep track of it there as well.
Is great, Julie. Thank you so much for testing our blood sugar together. I feel like we're little, blood sisters now. And
yes, we are.
and so for all of those of you watching, I hope that this helped make it demystify some of the processes involved. Reach out to your moderator or your diabetes education provider to help fill in any gaps. But I think that we've got it pretty well covered here, Julie. So thanks so much, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye.